Welcome, the Lord's chosen. The moment a chosen one stops second-guessing themselves, somebody else starts panicking. There's a strange pattern in human behavior that psychologists rarely talk about, but spiritual people notice instantly. The more intuitive you become, the more certain people start acting like they've accidentally stepped into a lie detector. And trust me, watching them squirm is almost comedic. They'll be smiling in your face while their soul is quietly packing its bags like, nope, we're not dealing with this level of perception today. See, long before you consciously realized your intuition had leveled up, someone else did. They felt it the moment you stopped responding on autopilot and started responding with awareness. That's when their nervous system lit up like a faulty generator. Suddenly, every move you made looked like a spiritual X-ray. Every silence felt like you were taking notes. Every answer you gave sounded suspiciously accurate, as if you had insider information on their intentions. And here's a fact that makes this entire situation even wilder. Studies show people become visibly tense when they believe someone can see through them, even if they're not doing anything wrong. So imagine how amplified that reaction becomes when they're around someone whose intuition has been sharpened by experience, pain, and divine timing. They didn't test you because they were curious. They tested you because something about your presence makes their hidden thoughts suddenly feel crowded. Their jokes get awkward. Their energy gets jumpy. Their spirit starts clearing its browser history. And the funniest part? They'll pretend they're just checking something, but the whole time they're watching you the way people watch horror movies, bracing for the moment the main character realizes the monster is actually behind them. So yes, you've got someone testing your intuition. But ever since that first test backfired, they've been walking around freaked out, hyper-aware, and spiritually whispering, "This person knows too much." Welcome to the chapter where the chosen one stops guessing and everyone else starts sweating. Number one, they tested you because your clarity terrified their chaos. Some people test you not because they want to understand you, but because standing next to someone with real inner clarity makes their own confusion impossible to hide. Your presence shines a light they weren't prepared for, and that's exactly why they poked at your intuition in the first place. They needed to know whether the calm confidence you carried was real or just another mask like theirs. When they realized it wasn't a mask at all, that's when the fear kicked in. Your clarity didn't come from pretending to know everything. It came from surviving enough, observing enough, and learning enough to finally trust your inner signals. Meanwhile, they were still juggling thoughts, motives, and insecurities they hoped no one could see. So when you stepped into their space with that grounded energy, it disrupted the comfortable chaos they were used to living in. People who thrive on confusion, mixed signals, and emotional fog always feel threatened by someone who moves with direction and purpose. They tested your intuition because they were hoping to find cracks. Maybe they thought you'd respond impulsively. Maybe they expected you to fall for a lie. Maybe they assumed you'd overlook the inconsistency in their words. But your clarity didn't let anything slide, and every time you saw through their energy, their chaos felt more exposed. It wasn't that you were judging them, it was the fact that you weren't lost with them. That's what terrified them. Your clarity forced them to confront their own lack of direction. It highlighted the confusion they've been hiding from themselves. It showed them a version of stability they couldn't fake their way into. And when someone living in emotional disorganization realizes they can't manipulate or distract someone like you, their last strategy is to test you, to see if maybe they were wrong about your strength. Unfortunately for them, every test only confirmed what they feared most. You're not operating on their level, you're operating above it. And nothing scares a chaotic soul more than a person whose clarity can't be shaken. Number two, their test was never curiosity. It was self-defense. When someone tests you, it's easy to assume they're curious, trying to understand your mind or see how you think. That's never the case. The truth is far more revealing. They're testing you because your presence makes them feel exposed, vulnerable, and unsafe in a way they can't control. Your intuition, your awareness, the way you seem to see what's really going on, it's like a mirror they weren't ready to look into. Their test is not about learning. It's about defending themselves from the truth you quietly carry. They approach with casual questions or subtle challenges, pretending it's innocent, but underneath it's pure survival instinct. They're trying to see if you can be manipulated, if there's a weak spot they can exploit, or if they need to step back before you unravel the patterns they've worked so hard to hide. The very act of testing you is a reflection of their own fear. The clearer and more grounded you are, the more defensive they become, because deep down they know you can see through the stories they tell themselves and others. Your responses aren't just answers, they're revelations to them. Every time you react with calm precision, they feel their attempts at control slipping. They realize that their words, their subtle tricks, and their manipulations are transparent to someone operating with true awareness. Their test isn't meant to fail you. It's meant to protect them from the shame of being outsmarted by a presence they can't understand. And the more they probe, the more obvious it becomes that their fear is self-generated. You're not creating tension. They already carry it. Your energy just makes them notice it. They thought they were measuring your boundaries, but what they really discovered is the fragility of their own. Every test they throw at you reflects back on them, exposing their insecurities, their hidden agendas, and their desperate need to feel safe in a world where they thought they were in control. They tested you for defense, not curiosity, and in doing so, they revealed themselves far more than they ever intended. Number 3, your intuition read them before their ego finished speaking. There's a moment when someone realizes they've been seen in a way they didn't expect. It isn't when you speak. It isn't when you act. It's when your intuition locks in and deciphers everything about them before they've even finished presenting themselves. People who test you think they are in control of the conversation, shaping the narrative to see how you respond. What they don't know is that your perception doesn't rely on their words. You're reading energy, patterns, intentions, the parts they try hardest to hide. Your intuition notices the pauses, the tension in their tone, the small tells that give away what they're really thinking, and it connects dots that even they aren't aware exist. They approach with subtle tests, trying to see if you'll overreact or reveal weakness. Every question, every comment is a probe, designed to measure you. But your intuition doesn't just measure, it interprets. It absorbs their behavior, calculates the underlying motive, and responds with a clarity that doesn't need justification. By the time they've formed their complete thought, you've already registered their intent, evaluated it, and adjusted your own energy accordingly. That gap between what they plan and what you perceive is where the fear starts. They begin to sense that no matter how carefully they craft their tests, you're already 3 steps ahead. Your awareness doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't get tricked by charm, misdirection, or ego. It works independently, scanning the hidden layers behind their actions and reflecting them back with quiet precision. And the moment they realize that you've known all along, that nothing they do can surprise you, their ego starts to unravel. They may still try to play the game, but the energy has shifted. What was meant to probe your boundaries now exposes their own. Their confidence wavers because they understand, even subconsciously, that you operate on a level beyond manipulation, beyond deception. Your intuition reading them before their ego finishes speaking isn't just perception, it's revelation. It exposes their strategy, their fear, and ultimately their limits. And in that exposure, they start to respect, fear, and above all, underestimate you at their own risk. Number 4, they realize too late that you don't observe people, you decode them. What unsettles people about you isn't the fact that you pay attention. It's the fact that your attention has layers. You don't just watch what someone says. You break it down, connect it to their energy, compare it to their behavior, and register what doesn't match. While they're assuming you're simply listening, you're actually processing information they don't even realize they're revealing. By the time they finish a sentence, you've already understood the intention behind it, the insecurity hidden inside it, and the history that shaped it. Most people survive on surface-level perception. They hear and respond, they see and assume. But you don't operate like that. Your mind naturally moves deeper, peeling back the social mask, tuning into the real story beneath the performance. You hear the words, but you also hear the gaps between them. You see the actions, but you also recognize the motive fueling them. You notice patterns they've carried for years, not because you try to, but because your mind is designed to catch what others overlook. This is why so many people misread your quietness. They think you're passive or uninterested or simply keeping to yourself. Meanwhile, you're catching inconsistencies, remembering details, sensing emotional shifts, and mapping out the truth without ever needing to confront them directly. You don't decode to judge, you decode to understand. But the moment someone realizes how much you understand, the panic sets in. It doesn't happen immediately. At first, they're comfortable, maybe even confident. Then they start noticing how accurately you respond, how effortlessly you address the things they never said out loud, how you anticipate their reactions before they fully express them. That's when it hits them. You weren't observing them like everyone else. You were translating them. And by the time they become aware of it, it's already too late. You've seen what they hide, sensed what they deny, and understood the parts of themselves they haven't yet admitted. They can't go back to pretending in front of someone who sees that clearly. That's the quiet power they never expected you to have, and the exact reason they fear they underestimated you. Number 5, they wanted to see if you were easy to manipulate, and found out you were unreachable. Some people approach others like a puzzle to solve or a game to win. They test boundaries, push buttons, and drop emotional bait to see who reacts first, hoping to find an opening where they can control the outcome. With you, they thought it would be the same. They assumed your reactions could be predicted, that your emotions could be swayed, or that a cleverly placed trap might make you falter. They didn't realize you operate on a level where their attempts at control are not only visible, they're ineffective. You move through life with a sort of internal map that others rarely notice. You've experienced enough, observed enough, and learned enough to recognize patterns the moment they begin. Their tactics, meant to confuse or manipulate, aren't surprises. They're data points. Every bait, every subtle trap, every hidden agenda becomes something you process effortlessly. You don't overreact. You don't get defensive. You don't stumble into their setup because you see the structure of it long before they even fully implement it. What makes you unreachable isn't arrogance. It's awareness. It's the refusal to play someone else's game while simultaneously understanding it better than they do. They thought they were testing your limits, but the reality is that you've already defined your boundaries internally. Their attempts to provoke, manipulate, or control collide with something unshakable, and that collision is exactly what unnerves them. The frustration comes when they realize that every move they made to corner you or catch you off guard was transparent to someone who didn't need to explain themselves. Their subtle manipulations became obvious, their tactics predictable, and their energy exhausting to maintain. And the worst part for them, you never even needed to call them out. Simply by existing within your own centered awareness, you showed them how irrelevant their strategies were. They wanted to manipulate. They wanted control. Instead, they discovered something far more unnerving. You're untouchable in a way that leaves them second-guessing everything they thought they knew about you. Number 6. They underestimated you because they mistook your calm for ignorance. Some people only understand intensity, loud reactions, and dramatic responses. If you're not visibly defending yourself or constantly proving your intelligence, they assume you don't have much going on internally. That's why your calmness confused them. They thought your quiet energy meant you weren't paying attention or that you didn't understand the full picture. They didn't realize that your stillness was the result of years of learning how to manage your emotions, protect your peace, and pick battles that actually matter. Your calm wasn't a lack of awareness, it was evidence of it. You've been through enough situations where reacting too quickly only gave other people power. You've learned that real strength often looks like composure, and real intelligence doesn't announce itself. You don't need to expose what you know, and you don't need to flex your intuition for validation. That kind of maturity is foreign to people who rely on chaos to feel relevant. So when they saw your steady presence, their first assumption was that you were slow, naive, or easy to outsmart. What they never considered is that your calmness comes from understanding people better than they understand themselves. You give them space to reveal their intentions, you let them talk, you allow them to expose the gaps in their story. Your silence isn't empty, it's collecting information. You don't react out of impulse because you prefer to respond from awareness. That's the part they weren't prepared for. They only realized their mistake when the situation shifted, when their games didn't rattle you, when their attempts to push you emotionally fell flat, when the things meant to confuse you didn't land. Suddenly, they had to face the truth. Your calm wasn't ignorance, it was depth. It was the quiet power of someone who sees the entire landscape instead of just the moment. By the time they understood that your stillness was strength, not cluelessness, it was already too late for them to try to reposition themselves. You had already read them, evaluated them, and outgrown them, all without raising your voice or breaking your peace. Number 7, the moment you saw through them, their confidence cracked. There's a fragile kind of arrogance people carry when they assume they know the game, and everyone else is just playing along. They test you because they believe your presence can be measured, controlled, or predicted. They think their subtle probes, their emotional pushes, and their veiled manipulations will reveal your limits. But the instant you saw through them, their foundation began to crumble. That quiet recognition on your part wasn't just awareness, it was a mirror they couldn't look away from. They realized in that moment that you weren't just paying attention, you were understanding. You were connecting dots they didn't even see themselves. Every word they spoke, every tactic they tried, every small signal of insecurity, they knew you had already decoded it all, and that scared them in ways they weren't prepared to admit. Confidence that had seemed so solid suddenly felt flimsy. Their ego, which had been the armor allowing them to manipulate or dominate, began to chip away. Their testing was meant to assert control, but when you caught on, it reversed the roles entirely. Suddenly, you weren't the one being measured. You were the one observing, analyzing, and anticipating their next move. That first sign that you could read them so clearly was enough to ignite panic. They had underestimated the depth of your perception, and once that miscalculation became obvious, their energy shifted from casual testing to subtle defensiveness. Every subtle smile, every joke, every attempt to mask insecurity now carried tension. By seeing through them, you didn't just expose their methods, You exposed their weakness. Their confidence wasn't shattered by confrontation. It cracked under the weight of being understood better than they understood themselves. That's why people like this become jittery, hesitant, and second-guessing. They wanted to test you, but the truth is that your insight was testing them, revealing the insecurities they had spent so long hiding. And from that moment forward, they walk carefully, knowing that the person they thought they could manipulate is already 3 steps ahead. Number 8, what freaked them out wasn't your prediction, it was your accuracy. People can handle guesses, they can handle assumptions, they can even handle suspicions. What they cannot handle is someone who speaks to the truth of a situation before they've even fully admitted it to themselves. That's what your intuition did. It didn't operate like a random guess or a lucky hit. It landed cleanly, directly, and uncomfortably on the exact thing they were trying to hide or avoid. Your accuracy felt like exposure. It wasn't that you were predicting events or behavior. You were reading their energy with such precision that it bypassed their words altogether. Before they explained their intentions, you already sensed them. Before they clarified their feelings, you already knew the emotional direction. That level of accuracy is unsettling because it removes the buffer they rely on: denial. When someone's inner world is understood without being verbally expressed, they lose the illusion of control over how they are perceived. And the moment your intuition hit the mark, they felt naked. Everything they thought they could disguise with charm, confidence, or vagueness was suddenly out in the open. It didn't matter if they laughed it off or tried to shift the topic. Your insight lingered. It pressed on them quietly, reminding them that you were not operating on the surface where most people stay. You were tuned into the deeper signals, the ones they didn't expect anyone to catch. Accuracy like that makes people nervous because it raises bigger questions in their mind. If this person sensed that, what else have they picked up on? How much do they already know? What if they've seen parts of me I haven't dealt with? That's where the fear comes in, not from what you said, but from the potential of everything else you're capable of seeing. Your intuition creates a ripple of self-awareness in others, and many aren't ready to face it. They wanted you to misread them, to get something wrong, to show that you were as blind as they hoped. Instead, you were spot on. It's not prediction that unsettles people, it's precision. And your ability to feel the truth before it's spoken makes them realize they're dealing with someone who can't be fooled, blurred, or easily dismissed. Number 9, you didn't react wrong. You reacted like someone who outgrew their games. People testing you are usually looking for a reaction that fits their narrative. They want drama, overreaction, or confusion, something that proves they still have control or influence over you. They expect you to stumble into frustration, to mirror their chaos, or to get tangled in the emotional traps they set. When that doesn't happen, it unnerves them. Your response, or rather your lack of reactive display, throws their entire plan off balance. Your neutrality isn't passivity, it's a form of mastery. It signals that you've evolved beyond needing validation or proving yourself to anyone who thrives on manipulation. You respond not because they push buttons, but because you operate from discernment, seeing the bigger picture where their games look petty and predictable. They thought they could trigger a pattern in you that they've seen work countless times with others. Instead, you demonstrate that your energy can't be hijacked. That calm, grounded reaction exposes more than their test. It exposes their strategy. It shows them that while they've spent time perfecting manipulation, you've spent time understanding cause, effect, and personal boundaries. Every subtle attempt to provoke is rendered irrelevant when met with awareness. They expect the emotional equivalent of a roller coaster. They get a quiet observer who has already mapped the ride and decided not to board. People don't realize that evolution is a quiet revolution. It's not announced with words or spectacle. Your neutral response carries weight because it reflects control over self rather than control over others. They misread it at first, assuming you're disengaged or unaware. Then slowly they recognize it's not disengagement, it's mastery. You didn't make a mistake by not reacting the way they hoped. You responded exactly how someone who has outgrown their games responds, with clarity, calm, and discernment. And that is far more unsettling than any dramatic reaction could ever be. Number 10. They thought they were testing your intuition, but you ended up testing their integrity. People who think they're clever always assume they hold the upper hand. They test you because they believe they're the ones observing, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. They approach with hidden motives, subtle questions, and small traps meant to measure how aware you are. But what they never consider is that every move they make reveals far more about them than anything they could ever expose in you. Their tests become confessions, their behavior becomes data, and their reactions become the real truth. When someone tries to probe your intuition, they expect you to reveal insecurity or uncertainty. Instead, what unfolds is a silent assessment of their character. Integrity can't hide under pressure, even the subtle kind. The moment they sense that you're catching on, everything shifts. Their energy gets jumpy, their tone gets sharper, their explanations get longer than necessary. They start clarifying things no one asked for. That's when you see the cracks, because confident people don't over-explain. Honest people don't get defensive. Secure people don't test others to begin with. The real exposure happens in how they react when their little test doesn't go the way they planned. They expected to find weakness in you, but instead, they revealed vulnerability in themselves. Suddenly, the person who came to measure your intuition finds themselves under a spotlight they never agreed to, but one their own behavior created. Your intuition didn't need to attack them. All it did was observe. And the more they reacted, the more their integrity, or lack of it, became obvious. Their distance afterward wasn't coincidence. Their shift in tone wasn't confusion. Their sudden politeness or nervousness wasn't random. Everything they did after testing you was a direct response to their fear that you saw something they weren't ready to confront. They tried to study you, but they exposed their inconsistencies, their motives, and the parts of themselves they've been trying to keep hidden. They thought you were the subject. They didn't realize you were the mirror, and that's why they backed away, because your intuition didn't reveal your weakness. It revealed their truth. Number 11, they didn't expect you to notice the source of their questions, not the words. Most people listen to what's being said. You listen to why it's being said. That's where everything shifts. When someone comes to you with questions wrapped in friendliness or curiosity, they assume you're going to take the words at face value. They think you'll respond normally, maybe even overshare, because that's how it works with people who only process things on the surface. But you don't operate on the surface, and that's what they underestimated. You don't get distracted by the wording. You track the energy behind the sentence, the tone, the speed, the timing, the subtle hesitation, the emotional temperature hidden underneath. You pay attention to what they're hoping you won't notice. While they're presenting their question like it's harmless, your intuition is already tracing the motive behind it like a trail of breadcrumbs. You're not hunting for a lie. You're identifying the intention they didn't say out loud. This is what threw them off. They expected you to answer what they asked. Instead, you responded to what they meant. And that's where their act started to collapse. Because when someone asks a question with a hidden agenda, and you answer in a way that exposes that agenda without accusing them directly, it shakes them. It makes them feel seen in a way they weren't ready for. Your responses didn't just address the conversation, they dismantled the purpose behind it. When they asked something to test your knowledge, you answered with clarity that showed you were already ahead. When they asked something to see if you'd slip, you stayed grounded. When they asked something to measure your vulnerability, you gave them nothing to work with. And when they asked something hoping to extract information, you noticed the extraction attempt before they even finished the sentence. That's the part they didn't plan for. Someone who listens past the words. Someone who sees the intention forming before the sentence lands. Someone who can't be fooled by tone, charm, or fake innocence. Their entire act depended on you missing the motive. But the moment you detected it, the performance didn't just weaken, it fell apart completely. Number 12. They realized you carry a type of awareness. They can't lie in peace around. There's a specific kind of discomfort people feel when they're around someone who sees more than what's presented. It's not about confrontation or calling anyone out. It's the quiet recognition that their usual tricks, masks, and polished performances don't land the same way with you. Your awareness isn't loud, but it's present. It shifts the atmosphere. It makes people second-guess the parts of themselves they normally hide with ease. Dishonesty needs darkness to survive. It needs confusion, distraction, and people who accept things at face value. But your presence brings a kind of clarity that doesn't rely on words. You can sense when someone's energy doesn't match their expression. You can feel when something is off, even before they finish speaking. And because you don't force anything, because you don't aggressively question or accuse, the truth ends up revealing itself naturally while you simply stand there grounded and observant. People who rely on manipulation or half-truths are used to blending in. They're used to slipping through conversations without anyone really noticing their inconsistencies. But when they encounter someone who pays attention with intention, someone whose intuition stays alert even in quiet moments, it unsettles them. They realize they can't relax in their usual way. The version of themselves that works on everyone else doesn't work on you. Your awareness doesn't expose them with words. It exposes them internally. It makes them reflect. It makes them nervous. It pushes them into suddenly over-explaining things that didn't require explanation. It makes them watch their own behavior in real time, trying to fix what they don't even fully understand. The lie they once delivered comfortably now feels heavy and risky, because they know you noticed the shift before they even finished delivering it. You don't have to accuse anyone. You don't have to voice what you know. Your energy alone holds a mirror, one they never planned to look into. That's why they become restless. That's why they avoid eye contact. That's why their confidence feels thinner around you. Your presence disrupts dishonesty because you don't just hear what people say. You see who they are. And for someone hiding behind performance, that realization is terrifying. Number 13, they wanted to study you, but ended up feeling like the one under investigation. Some people approach you with the mindset of a researcher. They think they're stepping into your life with control, observing your reactions, testing your sensitivity, and measuring your intuition like you're some sort of experiment. They come in confidently, believing they're the ones doing the analyzing. But what they don't realize is that the moment someone brings that kind of intention toward you, they automatically reveal more about themselves than they intended. Their tests don't stay one-sided for long, they boomerang. Their behavior shifts subtly, and your intuition picks up everything. You notice the tone changes, the strategic questions, the emotional bait they drop to see what you'll do. You watch the small inconsistencies in their stories. You pay attention to the parts they skip over quickly. You observe the way they check your reactions when they think you're not paying attention. And without even trying, they become the ones under a quiet, invisible scan. Not because you want to expose them, but because their actions activate your awareness. That reversal is what shakes them. They start feeling as though you're seeing too much, details they thought were shielded, motives they believed were undetectable. They begin to notice that you're not reacting like their previous targets. You don't take the bait. You don't fall for their emotional switches. You don't get confused by their strategic chaos. Instead, you observe calmly, and that calmness is unsettling to someone who relies on manipulation to maintain control. Suddenly, they feel watched, not in a paranoid way, but in a spiritually naked way. They feel your intuition reading the truth behind their words. They feel the weight of your awareness catching every inconsistency. Their test becomes their exposure. Their attempt to understand you becomes a mirror reflecting who they are. And the very energy they meant to use on you turns back on them, revealing patterns, habits, and intentions they've been hiding even from themselves. They weren't prepared for the shift. They came to analyze you, but your presence flipped the dynamic. And instead of you being the subject of their little experiment, they ended up realizing they were the one being quietly, effortlessly decoded the whole time. Number 14, you're not being tested anymore. You're being avoided because they know you know. There comes a point when people stop trying to test your intuition, not because they're satisfied, but because they've seen enough to understand they can't get away with anything around you. The shift is subtle at first. The conversations become shorter. Their tone becomes more cautious. Their questions lose their confidence. They don't probe anymore. They don't poke at your reactions. They don't try to read you like they used to. Instead, they keep their distance because being close to someone who sees them too clearly is uncomfortable for people who live behind masks. The fear didn't begin at the moment they tried you. It began long before that, the moment they realized your intuition wasn't a guess or a vibe or a coincidence. It was accuracy, precision. It was the type of knowing that doesn't need confirmation because it comes from a place beyond logic. When someone feels that kind of awareness directed at them, especially when they're used to fooling others, it shakes them. It exposes the weakness in their strategies. It reminds them that their usual tricks won't work. Not here, not with you. They avoid you now, not out of arrogance, but out of self-protection. They feel seen in a way that strips away their performance. They can't maintain their facade around someone who catches the intention behind their words before the sentence is even finished. They know you've already answered the real question, the one they were never going to ask out loud. Do you see what I'm doing? And your energy, your silence, your consistency all said the same thing. Yes, completely. That realization is what made them retreat. Not guilt, not shame, exposure. They knew that continuing to test you would only lead to more of their truth slipping out where they can't control it. So they pulled back, avoided eye contact, kept their distance, and acted like nothing happened. But you felt the shift immediately. You're not being tested anymore because they know the results. And the results proved something they were never prepared to face. You understood them long before they even tried to understand you. Conclusion. What started as subtle tests, probing questions, and cautious observations has now fully revealed itself. You weren't being measured to see how far you could bend. You were being reflected back the truth of those around you. Every attempt to manipulate, every little tactic, every hidden motive bounced off your awareness and landed squarely on the ones who thought they were in control. Your clarity, accuracy, discernment, and intuitive strength didn't just see the games. They exposed them, dismantled them quietly, and left no room for deception. From their initial probing to their eventual avoidance, the pattern is undeniable. You are not just intuitive. You are untouchable in ways that make others second-guess, retract, and retreat. You operate on a level that doesn't respond to chaos because you've outgrown it. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. Your presence alone disarms, deciphers, and reveals the truth. And that is a power most people will never understand. In essence, this isn't about them testing you, it's about the inevitability of your awareness. The world may try to challenge your perception, question your intuition, and gauge your reactions, but you have already surpassed their games. Their fear, their defensiveness, and their retreat are proof that your insight isn't just real, it's transformative. You didn't just pass their tests, you became the standard they weren't ready to measure against. If this resonated with you and gave you a new perspective on your own intuition and presence, make sure to hit that subscribe button to join the journey. Like the video, if you felt the power in these truths, comment below to share your experiences, and share this with someone who needs to understand their own untouchable awareness. This isn't just content, it's a mirror for those who are awake, aware, and unshakable. Stay blessed always.